Over the first 18 months of Israel's war on Gaza, critics of Israel would point out how Israel was intentionally restricting supplies of food, medicine, and other humanitarian supplies. Defenders of Israel repeatedly claimed that this wasn't true, that Israel was letting in aid. They did this because of course it would be evil to cut off basic humanitarian supplies to a civilian population, and they believed that Israel wouldn't do something like that. They kept making this argument despite overwhelming evidence that Israel was in fact restricting aid. Basically every international aid organization reported that this was the case, that Israel was unnecessarily and intentionally hindering their efforts. Now this argument is irrelevant. Israel has openly and clearly stated that it is no longer allowing any aid into Gaza. Intentionally cutting off the supply of food and medicine and other essential supplies to a civilian population of 2 million people is a profound crime. There is no possible justification for it. This policy is a blatant attack on a civilian population by intentionally depriving them of food. The use of food as a weapon in this way is completely indiscriminate and is plainly evil. There is no way to defend this policy, and there is no way to understand it or talk about it other than to say that it is a policy of genocide. For the people who want to continue defending Israel, they are forced to defend the indefensible. It has now been over 65 days since Israel enacted this policy. No aid has been allowed in since. This is the most extreme action that Israel has taken in the entire course of this conflict. It represents a profound destruction of humanitarian norms and the crossing of completely unacceptable moral lines. An important question to ask is why did Israel enact this policy now? After 18 months of non-stop indiscriminate bombing, and after reaching a ceasefire agreement that would have led to all of the hostages being returned, is it now suddenly necessary for Israel to use starvation as a strategy? Did Israel suddenly become evil? The reason they are doing this now is because they no longer have to pretend. They know that Trump will not do anything to hold back their brutality. They have a free hand to openly pursue their goals. Those who have defended Israel in the past have to come to terms with this. The extremist Israeli government is seeking and has been seeking throughout this conflict to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people from Gaza. Top Israeli ministers have in recent days openly stated that they are now planning to occupy Gaza and will then facilitate the expulsion of all Palestinians from the territory. They are free to do this because they know they have Trump's full backing. On top of having Trump's support, they are further emboldened because the world is distracted. Despite Israel engaging in its most extreme, most open and blatant acts of genocide, there has been relatively little attention on this issue. The world is distracted by Trump's wild tariff games, fears of trade wars, crashing stock markets, and a potential economic downturn. In the U.S., people are even more distracted by all of these things, as well as by Trump's deportations, the White House openly disregarding Supreme Court rulings, and DOJ dismantling fundamental government institutions. All of these issues are important and deserve attention, but they have the effect of taking our attention away from the genocide that is taking place in Gaza, which is at this moment accelerating. The chaos of the Trump administration is providing a perfect cover for Israel. The mainstream media in the U.S. has been biased throughout the conflict and has been uncomfortable dealing with Israeli crimes and atrocities. They don't want to have to talk about Israel and would love any excuse to avoid the topic. They are happy to talk about Trump constantly and effectively ignore what is going on in Gaza. As a result, at a time when Israel is pushing its most extreme agenda yet, it is receiving only limited attention. The situation is obviously very dark. I think for most people who have been watching this unfold over the past year and a half, it has become clear that there is probably not going to be any justice in the immediate term, and that Israel will likely be allowed to continue with its brutal policies against the Palestinian people. We need to continue doing everything we can to bring this to an end, but we also need to be prepared for the long fight for justice. The narrative around Israel's genocide is changing and will continue to change. The truth is very powerful, and given time, it will win out. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence and documentation of Israel's crimes. There are countless pictures and videos of the many atrocities and massacres that have been committed. There are also countless reports, interviews, and works of journalism describing Israel's actions and policies. Humanitarian and international organizations have documented how Israel has intentionally restricted aid, and satellite imagery shows clearly how brutal and indiscriminate its bombing campaign has been. There are also many open confessions of Israeli leaders and Israeli soldiers bragging about their actions and clearly stating their intentions. All of these will have a powerful impact and will gradually but continually push more and more people toward understanding the situation as it really is. The weight of this evidence is undeniable. There are many people that just don't understand. For years, they were told that Israel was the good guy and was simply defending itself. Everything we have seen over the past year and a half greatly undermines this narrative, but it is still very difficult for people to get to the point where they can genuinely question their pre-held beliefs. People get defensive and double down on what they have been told. But at some point, the weight of reality and the continuous stream of evidence that Israel is pursuing genocide will break through. It becomes increasingly difficult for supporters of Israel to repeatedly deny that this is genocide. It is an exhausting task for them and will eventually morally wear them down. You can only say so many times, "This is not genocide," before you start to understand the truth. This is why we have to keep talking about this and ensure that people are continually made to see the evidence of what is happening. This gradual process will break down people's support for Israel and its crimes. As this happens, and support in the U.S. for Israel is eroded, the U.S. will get to a point where it will stop blocking international efforts to hold Israel accountable. This may happen in the next administration, or the administration after that, or it may take even longer, but it will happen. When it does, that will be when justice will have a chance. The Israeli leaders, the mid-level officers, and the soldiers on the ground who engaged in war crimes need to be held accountable. All of the data and evidence that has been collected describing their crimes needs to be brought forward, and they need to be put on trial. This is the only way there can be justice. Without this happening, it effectively means there is no international order, there is no international law, and there is no justice. If we want to live in a world where the ideas of human rights and international law mean something, the people who have committed these crimes must be held accountable. This issue is not just about Gaza and the Palestinians. If Israel is allowed to get away with these actions and face no consequences, that sends a signal to all authoritarian and oppressive regimes around the world that they also will not face any consequences. It emboldens them to commit their own atrocities. It makes a mockery of our system of international laws and shows that it is a system of hypocrisy. Holding Israel accountable will be a long process that will take many years and will face pushback from some, but this is the only way we can reestablish the rule of international law and respect for human rights, and it's the only way we can have justice.